Now, police strip-searched a child every 14 hours in England and Wales over 5 years, according to a new report by England's Children's Commissioner.
Dame Rachel de Souza says too many of these searches are unnecessary, unsafe and underreported. Now, despite some improvements, black children are still disproportionately affected. Our UK correspondent Adina Campbell has the details.
When the news broke of what happened to child Q, there were protests around the country. The 15-year-old black girl was strip-searched by police at school in East London after wrongly suspecting she was carrying drugs. No appropriate adult was present during the intimate search, and the teenager was also on her period. A new report from England's Children's Commissioner has now found police strip-searched a child every 14 hours in England and Wales over 5 years. There were more than 3,000 intimate searches of children in new data gathered from all police forces between 2018 and 2023. 1 in 20 failed statutory codes of practice, and almost half of these searches led to no further action. This mum I spoke to in the south of England says her son was strip-searched by police in custody when he was 14. Their words have been voiced by an actor.
He was strip-searched and then left naked in the cell. It's sexual abuse of a child. This is happening to mainly marginalised black children.
He was arrested on suspicion of possessing cannabis and claims it was a small amount for personal use. Now in his 20s, he's been left with long-term trauma and is a vulnerable adult with serious mental health conditions, including psychosis and schizophrenia. The Home Office says no child should ever be strip-searched without an appropriate adult unless there's a serious risk of harm to themselves or others, nor should they ever be conducted on the basis of their race and ethnicity. Even though this new report shows there are lower numbers of strip searches overall and better safeguarding referrals by police, black children are still 4 times more likely to be strip-searched than the overall child population.
While some progress has been made, there's still a long way to go when it comes to policing, particularly confidence in policing from black communities. Most of the families I've spoken to over the years say they're simply too scared to speak out about their experiences over fears they'll become even more of a target.
The report has made a number of recommendations, including improvements on the quality of strip search data and a higher threshold for these searches, to only be used as a last resort by police. Adina Campbell, BBC News.
Let's talk now to the Children's Commissioner for England. That's Rachel de Souza. Rachel, good morning to you. Thank you for being on the programme. So talk to me, first of all, if you will, about how these searches should be done in the presence of an appropriate adult. Who is that adult?
So there are really clear rules, statutory rules around them. So there should be an appropriate adult, which is a parent, or it could be a social worker, but someone who the child has there as who can watch out for them. They're meant to be done in the police station or at the child's home. Too many of them were done in public places that others could see. And there are really clear rules. It worries me also that like 88% or so of them were done, on suspicion of drugs. This is a really intimate search with over and only a small percentage done on suspicion of violence or harm. My argument is they should only be done if it's a life-threatening situation. Let me just remind viewers: this is pre-arrest. This is a child there's just a suspicion, they're taken, there's meant to be an appropriate adult there, in 45% of cases there are not, and their clothes are removed and their most intimate parts looked at and moved if necessary. It's really very intrusive, and it's hard to see, given that only about half of the strip searches have further action taken, and a far smaller percent actually end up with charges, that they've been done because it's really, really crucial for life and death that they've been done. And that, to me, is the benchmark that really needs to be there.
So if there are very clear rules, why are there circumstances where those rules are not stuck to?
Well, I mean, one of the things that concerns me is if I wasn't publishing this data would not be in any public arena. Nobody collects this data. When I started, I basically heard about the Child Q case, looked into it, committed to her that this wouldn't happen to any other child, and then found this data wasn't published. I've spent years calling for this data, making sure forces hold this data. I want the Home Office to publish this data so that we can actually ask these questions, and as a matter of course these questions are asked. I mean, clearly these things have been slipping under the radar and procedures are not being followed properly, and it's not good enough. Now, we are seeing improvements. Since 2020 to now, the Met Police have halved the numbers that they've done, no doubt because of the Child Q case. It goes to show that leadership and publishing the data can make a difference. You know, if the bosses are saying, police chiefs are saying, you know, that we need to follow the rules, we need to do fewer of these only if it's more important, then that is what will change things. But the racial disproportionality is extremely concerning. Over the past few years, it's been at 6.6% more likely to be strip searched if you're black. Now it's 4.4%, a little improvement. I'm not going to stop until there is no racial disproportionality. Really, it's not good enough.
There are two issues here as well, aren't there? One is that racial disproportionality, and one of young people and their relationship with the police or law enforcement. And I wonder, given, for example, what we saw in Southport and then those riots that spread across the country, what that tells us about the relationship with some young people, the relationship they have with the police.
Do you know, it's really interesting because as Children's Commissioner, I get to talk to children everywhere. I talk to children in youth prison, children in schools, children in hospitals, children everywhere. And in fact, 1 million children recently have filled in my surveys on what they think about what they think the government should do. When I talk to them about the police and when they respond on the police, they say they know it's a hard job. They know the police have to do tough things. They want to be protected by the police, but the police must be trustworthy and must keep the rules. I think that really says it all. And I think there are groups of young people who feel that isn't the case and they're unfairly, you know, picked on and unfortunately data like this shows that it does look like this is the case, or we certainly can't say it's not. So I think the police have a big job to do here in terms of listening to young people, especially those that are, you know, are being, you know, from the black community and other communities that are disproportionately in these figures, and they need to be listening, understanding their experience and changing their ways. The Mets have shown they can do it. They've halved their numbers since 2020. Now, but across the country, you would be surprised. It's not always the big urban centres that are doing the largest amount of strip searches. It's right across the country. There's a big job for the police to do in terms of listening to children and policing with a safeguarding first, you know, approach.
Talking about children's relationship and maybe attitude to the police, we've seen recently with the riots that Ben mentioned, children as young as 12 involved there. How do you even begin to tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, look, that to me, a 12-year-old, it's a safeguarding issue. Where are the family? What's happening at school? Of course, you know, of course, a child can't cause harm to others, shouldn't be harming themselves. There has to be consequences for what they've done, but we need to make sure that those children are like put on the right path and can actually, you know, learn to function as better citizens, and that's got to be the approach. And I mean, we have to also ask hard question about social media. I think none of us had realised quite how impactful over the past few years social media has been on young people. They don't make a distinction between the online and the offline world. If they hear it in the online world and think it's true, you know, they will act on it. It's not acceptable. We need the tech companies, you know, we need all of us to be taking responsibility for getting that changed. And young people need to be taught, you know, what they can and can't do, and they have to face consequences for these things, but we really need to make sure that we can put things right so they can be successful adults.
Dame Rachel de Souza, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.